The sun burned mercilessly over the busy streets of Manila that Tuesday afternoon. Maria Santos, a 32-year-old single mother, walked slowly along Roxas Avenue, carrying her 5-year-old daughter in her arms. Little Sophia was asleep, her fragile body burning with fever, while Maria fought against the tears that insisted on flowing. Her feet ached in worn sandals, and the child's weight seemed to increase with each step, but she couldn't stop. The public hospital was still 3 kilometers away. Maria's bag, patched in several places, contained only a few pesos, not enough to pay for a jeepney or tricycle. She had spent her last savings on rent for the small room she shared with Sophia in a Tonda tenement. As an auxiliary nurse unemployed for 3 months, every centavo mattered. Sophia's fever had started the night before, and Maria spent the early morning hours applying cold compresses to her daughter's forehead, praying she would get better. Manila's humid heat made each breath difficult. Maria stopped for a moment under the shade of a tree, adjusting Sophia in her arms. Passers-by hurried past, some casting pitying glances, others simply ignoring the scene. An elderly lady offered a bottle of water, which Maria accepted gratefully, moistening her daughter's dry lips. Memories of the husband who had left when Sophia was only 1 year old haunted Maria in these difficult moments. He had promised to return from work abroad, but never gave news again. Since then, Maria had been raising her daughter alone, working 2 jobs to support them both. The pandemic had changed everything. Hospitals reduced their staff, and she found herself on the street, struggling to survive. Sophia moaned softly in her arms, and Maria held her tighter against her chest. She needed to continue. Every minute counted when it came to her daughter's health. With renewed determination, she resumed walking, ignoring the protest of her tired muscles. The hospital was still far away, but a mother's love drove her forward, painful step after painful step. The sky was beginning to darken with rain clouds when Maria finally spotted the corner of Pedro Gil Street. Her heart sank as she realized there was still a long way to go. Sophia was getting hotter, and despair was beginning to take hold. It was then that she noticed a small crowd gathered across the street, near a local boxing gym. The crowd grew rapidly in front of the Wild Card Boxing Gym, a place known for training some of the Philippines' best fighters. Maria barely paid attention to the commotion, focused only on her goal of reaching the hospital. But when she tried to cross the street, the flow of people inadvertently pushed her closer to the center of the commotion. Security guards tried to organize the small crowd, while camera flashes illuminated the gym entrance. Maria tried to go around the group, but Sophia began to cry, attracting curious looks. The child's crying cut through the hot air, a sound of pure discomfort and illness that made several people turn around. It was then that a short man, but with an imposing presence, emerged from the gym. He wore simple training clothes and carried a sports bag. His eyes, known for their intensity in the ring, immediately softened upon noticing Maria with a feverish child in her arms. Something in that mother's silent desperation deeply touched his heart. The man whispered something to one of his assistants and walked directly toward Maria, ignoring the excited shouts from the crowd. His steps were decisive but gentle, like those of someone who knew well the weight of life's difficulties. Maria, too exhausted to pay attention to faces, just hugged Sophia tighter when she noticed someone approaching. With a delicate gesture, the man touched Maria's shoulder, making her stop. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and he noticed the deep fatigue, maternal concern, and fierce determination in that gaze. Without saying a word, he extended his arms, offering to carry the child. Maria hesitated, her protective instinct on alert, but something in the stranger's kind expression made her trust. The man held Sophia with the experience of a father, supporting her feverish little head against his shoulder. With his free hand, he gestured for Maria to follow him, guiding her through the crowd that now watched the scene in respectful silence. No one dared approach or interfere, as if everyone understood that something special was happening. The man led Maria and Sophia to a black van parked near the gym. The driver, visibly surprised, quickly opened the doors. With infinite care, the man settled Sophia in the back seat, making sure she was comfortable. Maria entered next, still confused and too exhausted to question the sudden help. The van's air conditioning brought immediate relief. The man took a cold water bottle from the refrigerated compartment and offered it to Maria, who drank gratefully before moistening Sophia's lips again. He then took his cell phone and made a quick call, speaking in Tagalog with someone on the other end. Maria could only understand fragments. Hospital, child, urgent. Minutes later, the van stopped in front of St. Luke's Medical Center, one of Manila's most prestigious hospitals. Maria felt her heart race. She could never afford treatment at an institution of that level. But before she could protest, the man was already outside, carrying Sophia in his arms and being received by a medical team that seemed to be waiting for them. A wheelchair was brought for Maria, who could barely stand after the long walk. Nurses led her along with Sophia to a private emergency room, where doctors immediately began examining the child. The man remained there, talking quietly with the medical team and filling out forms. Maria watched everything as if in a dream. Sophia was gently placed on a gurney, receiving intravenous fluids and medication. The doctors explained it was an acute respiratory infection, aggravated by dehydration. With proper treatment, she would recover completely in a few days. Relief washed over Maria, and the tears she had held back for so long finally rolled freely. The man approached again, this time accompanied by a hospital social worker. With gentle gestures and comforting words in Tagalog, he explained that all medical costs would be covered. More than that, he had arranged for a hospital assistance program to help Maria find employment at the institution itself, taking advantage of her experience as an auxiliary nurse. While Sophia slept peacefully, already showing signs of improvement with the medication, Maria finally had a moment to process everything that had happened. The social worker returned with papers to fill out, forms for the hospital's employment program. It was an opportunity Maria had never imagined possible. It was then that a nurse entered the room, carrying a tray of food. She looked at the man who still remained discreetly in a corner of the room and smiled with reverence. In Tagalog, she thanked him for his presence at the hospital, mentioning how his visit always brought hope to patients. Maria finally paid real attention to her benefactor's face. Recognition hit her like lightning. The almond-shaped eyes, the humble smile, the charismatic presence. It was Manny Pacquiao, the pride of the Philippines, the champion who had elevated his country's name around the world. Maria felt her legs weaken, not from fatigue this time, but from pure shock. The greatest boxer of all time had carried her daughter in his arms. Pacquiao noticed Maria's surprised expression and approached with his characteristic shy smile. In soft Tagalog, he explained that he understood the difficulties she was going through. He himself had grown up in extreme poverty, knew the feeling of not having enough to feed the family, of fighting every day just to survive. The champion briefly told about his childhood in General Santos City, about the days when he slept on the streets and sold bread to help his mother. He spoke about how boxing had changed his life, but never made him forget where he came from. That's why, whenever possible, he tried to help those who reminded him of his own difficult past. Maria listened in silence, tears flowing freely. They were no longer tears of despair, but of deep gratitude. Pacquiao held her hands gently, assuring her that she was no longer alone. The hospital's assistance program would not only give her a job, but also provide daycare for Sophia and housing assistance until she could stabilize. In the following days, Sophia's recovery was remarkable. The girl, now smiling and playful, charmed the nurses with her renewed energy. Maria spent her days beside her daughter, but also participated in interviews and orientations for her new position at the hospital. It was a fresh start that had seemed impossible just days before. Pacquiao visited mother and daughter twice more during the hospitalization. On one of these visits, he brought toys and books for Sophia, who hugged him as if he were a dear uncle. For Maria, he brought something even more valuable: the promise that his educational foundation would cover Sophia's studies through university. News of Pacquiao's action didn't take long to spread. Journalists tried to get details, but the champion maintained his usual discretion about charitable acts. For him, helping Maria and Sophia wasn't publicity. It was simply the right thing to do. Years of success hadn't erased the memories of his own struggle, and each person helped was a way to honor his own journey. Maria began her new job as a nursing assistant at St. Luke's 2 weeks later. The hospital provided a small subsidized apartment near the workplace, and Sophia was enrolled in the institution's daycare. For the first time in years, Maria felt she could breathe, that the future held possibilities beyond mere survival. The transformation in mother and daughter's life was evident. Maria, once bent by the weight of worries, now walked with the upright posture of someone who had recovered their dignity. Sophia, healthy and well cared for, flourished in daycare, making friends and learning new things every day. Financial security brought peace, but it was human kindness that restored her faith. Co-workers at the hospital soon discovered the story of how Maria had arrived there. Many were moved to learn that the great champion had personally intervened to change that family's destiny. But Maria always emphasized that the most impressive thing wasn't her benefactor's fame, but his humility and genuine concern for others. Months passed, and Maria flourished in her new work environment. Her dedication and prior experience made her an exemplary employee, and she was soon promoted to a position of greater responsibility. With a better salary, she began to save for the first time in her life, creating an emergency fund to ensure she would never again face the previous desperation. Sophia, now completely recovered, had become one of the happiest children in daycare. Her colorful drawings frequently portrayed a short man with boxing gloves, always surrounded by hearts, her childish way of expressing gratitude to the man who had changed their lives. Educators noticed her accelerated development, a reflection of the emotional stability she now enjoyed. Maria's story inspired other hospital employees to create an informal mentoring program for new hires in vulnerable situations. She herself became a mentor, sharing not only professional knowledge but also offering emotional support to those who, like her, struggled to rebuild their lives. Pacquiao continued his occasional visits to the hospital, always discreet, always focused on helping without seeking recognition. On one of these visits, Maria had the opportunity to introduce him to other families she now helped through the mentoring program. The champion listened to each story attentively, offering words of encouragement and, when possible, additional assistance through his foundation. The impact of that chance encounter on the street continued to expand like ripples in a lake. Hospital employees, inspired by the story, increased donations to the Social Assistance Fund. Local businesspeople, upon learning of the program, offered to sponsor scholarships and internship opportunities. Kindness had created a virtuous cycle that benefited the entire community. Maria often reflected on how a single act of compassion had transformed not only her life, but created a chain of kindness that touched dozens of other families. She now understood why Pacquiao continued helping people even after achieving fame and fortune, because he knew that each transformed life had the power to transform many others. 1 year after that fateful encounter, Maria was invited to speak at a charity event organized by Pacquiao's foundation. Standing before an audience of donors and philanthropists, she shared her story with a firm, clear voice. She was no longer the desperate woman walking the streets with a feverish child in her arms. During her speech, Maria emphasized how the help received had gone far beyond the financial aspect. The job at the hospital had restored her dignity, The guaranteed education for Sophia had planted seeds of hope for the future, but above all, the compassion shown had renewed her faith in humanity. She spoke about the multiplier effect of kindness, about how she could now help others in the same situation. Sophia, now 6 years old, was in the front row, wearing her best dress and holding a drawing she had made especially for the occasion. When Pacquiao took the stage after Maria's speech, the girl ran to him, handing over her artwork. The drawing showed two figures holding hands under a rainbow, with the words, "Salamat per, Tito Manny," written in colorful letters. The champion, visibly moved, knelt down to be at Sophia's height and hugged her. The image was captured by photographers present, becoming the symbol of that night's fundraising campaign. But for Maria, the moment represented much more. It was the closing of one cycle and the beginning of many others. In the following months, Maria was promoted to nursing supervisor, leading a team dedicated to caring for needy families. She implemented protocols that ensured no desperate mother would be sent away without care, that no child would be left without medical attention due to lack of resources. Her personal experience had become an instrument of institutional change. Sophia herself began to show interest in helping others. At school, she organized campaigns to collect school supplies for needy classmates. At home, she helped her mother prepare food packages to distribute to the homeless on weekends. The seed of compassion had germinated in the new generation. 3 years later, on a sunny Sunday morning, Maria and Sophia participated in a community event at Resol Park. It was a health fair organized by the hospital where Maria worked, offering free examinations and medical guidance to the needy population. Maria coordinated a team of volunteers, while Sophia, now 8 years old, helped distribute healthy snacks to children. Among the crowd seeking care, Maria noticed a young mother carrying a visibly sick baby. The woman looked exhausted, her eyes revealing the same desperation Maria knew so well. Without hesitation, she approached, offering immediate help. The child was quickly attended to by the doctors present, diagnosed with severe dehydration, and treatment was initiated. While consoling the young mother, Maria shared her own story. She spoke about the day she walked aimlessly with feverish Sophia in her arms, about the unexpected encounter that changed everything. The woman listened with tears in her eyes, finding hope in the words of someone who truly understood her situation. Maria arranged not only immediate medical treatment, but connected the family with the hospital's assistance programs. She offered her personal number, promising to follow up on the case and ensure that mother and child received all necessary support. It was her way of paying forward the kindness she had received, perpetuating the cycle of compassion begun years before. That afternoon, a familiar car stopped near the event. Manny Pacquiao, accompanied by his team, came to make a surprise visit to the health fair. Upon seeing Maria coordinating volunteers with Sophia by her side, a smile lit up his face. He approached discreetly, observing the dedicated work of that woman he had once helped. When their eyes met, not many words were needed. The embrace exchanged spoke of mutual gratitude, of transformed lives, of fulfilled purposes. Sophia ran to greet her Tito Manny, now tall enough not to need to crane her neck so much. The champion watched with pride as the healthy, articulate girl explained how she was helping other children that day. As the sun set over Manila, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maria reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun on that desperate afternoon. A simple act of kindness had created waves that continued to spread, touching lives, restoring hopes, multiplying compassion. She now understood that true champions were not just those who won in the ring, but those who used their strength to lift others up. The story of Maria and Sophia became legend in the corridors of St. Luke's Medical Center, retold to each new employee, each family in difficulty. Not as a fairy tale, but as living proof that human kindness, when genuine and unpretentious, has the power to transform destinies. And somewhere in the streets of Manila, Manny Pacquiao continued his walk. His eyes always alert for the next opportunity to make a difference, one heart at a time. That day in the park, watching Maria help other families with the same dedication she had once received, Pacquiao understood that his most lasting legacy would not be the championship belts hanging on his wall, but the lives transformed by the power of love for others. And so, the circle of compassion continued, always expanding, always including more souls in its orbit of hope and transformation. If you like this kind of story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos.